Welcome to Free to Speak, the New Zealand Free Speech Union podcast. If you enjoy the show, subscribe for uncensored conversations and free speech news from New Zealand and beyond. Welcome to Free to Speak. It's the new Free Speech Union weekly podcast that we're putting out. We're looking to do both one-on-one with guests, interviews, and also just sort of gathering a few board members together, doing a little bit of a roundup of perhaps issues that have come up during the week or the last couple of weeks and sort of breaking those down in a bit more detail. My name's Ghislaine Heather. I'm the CEO of the Free Speech Union, and joining me today is Stephen Franks, Chair of the Board, Douglas Brown, a criminal barrister on our council as well, and Annie O'Brien, political commentator and girl everywhere about town on the political commentary at the moment. So thanks, guys, for joining us on here. It's the first of the sort of board roundups, so a little bit of we can have some fun, we can dig into some issues, and if nothing else, it'll be entertaining for us, and hopefully it might be entertaining for some of our subscribers out there as well. Wanting to cover off a couple of topics this week, top of mind, and I think you almost have to be under a rock not to have heard anything about the Broadcasting Standards Authority and their land grab for the internet. A little bit of a mission creep as the traditional, not policemen, but traditional sort of, regulators of broadcasting standards, good taste and decency, balance, etc. in the media have taken on or are considering taking on a complaint against Sean Plunket from the platform, and as part of that have asserted jurisdiction over live streaming on the internet, which and there's a lot of mixed views out there about who they are, should they assert jurisdiction over the internet, and what does that actually mean? Stephen, do you want to sort of give us a little breakdown of perhaps their land grab or their assertions of do they have jurisdiction or do they not have jurisdiction over live streaming and podcasting on the internet?
Yeah, it's pretty funny at the moment. It's a 1989 Act designed at a time when broadcasting was television and radio, and coming out of a period when bandwidth was, the available frequencies were tight. It was really a rationed resource, and the state decided who would get the privilege. And it was pretty easy for the BSA, the Broadcasting Standards Authority, to feel confident that it had all the screws it needed to wield pretty tight controls. And so that carried on for a long time. And in fact, I'm pretty sure Sean Plunket was the target of 2 or 3 goes by them. Their standards are in the statute and for complaints, and they're really hugely discretionary. Essentially, they can dong someone, fine them, cause them to stop broadcasting for breaches of good taste and decency, which I don't think I can see everyone sort of smirking at that, because we all know how different our views are of taste and decency, and how easy it is to decide that something that offends you is obviously in bad taste or obviously not decent. We come up to the present, and the authority has largely stuck with trying to enforce its authority, enforcing its authority over the traditional broadcast modes. The Act has a definition of broadcasting which covers their jurisdiction. That's really a bit unclear. It is arguable that if you are receiving material content without a sort of regular interaction, in other words, if you just switch on and let it run, that the definition could cover a whole lot of podcasts and internet material. The context of the Act, we think, is pretty clear that was never contemplated, and I think a sensible court would say this wasn't within Parliament's contemplation. The BSA gets a complaint about Sean they write an opinion or a provisional finding that they have authority. They haven't actually yet told him that they are going to investigate, take up the complaint, but they invited him to submit on it. And of course, the implications become pretty obvious immediately, that if he's caught, because he has deliberately set up the platform so that the BSA couldn't shut him down, as they have in the past, then a whole lot of others would be, quite apart from the prospect that there may be a number of international platforms that they'll try and regulate. There's a whole range now of alternative voices, left to right. You said earlier that there's a whole lot of views about this. Really, what's been very interesting is that there's been almost a consensus that the BSA is out of its lane, that it doesn't have the resources or the capacity to take on internet content management, that it's a big policy issue and they shouldn't have tried unilaterally to extend their jurisdiction. When I say that, you could imagine, for example, that mainstream media who are subject to it and have to pay levies to it and have to go through the painful process of responding to formal complaints might have thought, great, this is going to be a bit of a gameplay leveler and catch some of these internet broadcasters who've been getting away with stuff which we wouldn't get away with. In fact, that hasn't happened. The BSA has been so irksome as a regime to the mainstream media that I don't think I've seen any of them welcoming their attempt. And similarly, the political reaction has been pretty universal. The Prime Minister has commented very adversely. So have other politicians. Laura McClure from ACT has put into the biscuit tin for ACT members' bill a pretty simple bill to abolish the BSA, and it's not outlandish.
The big question for me, Stephen, is it feels like such a ham-fisted attempt. And so, like, why now? Why are they doing it? You know, like, I'd be interested in people's views on, you know, is it revenue-driven? Is it that they wanted to place themselves as the super regulator, or are they just inventing a new reason to exist?
I think we could speculate quite a lot. I mean, some people say it's just they want to keep the empire alive and they've lost their raison d'etre, and so that they are trying to make sure they're there. Others might say that it's a kind of an unsophisticated or a rather naive reaction by a woke group who don't like Sean and thought they had a chance to dong him, and not really well considered at all, and that the hornet's nest they've stirred up would have become as a real shock to them. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how useful it is to speculate on this. There will be someone who'll know, but certainly I haven't talked to anyone who feels that they've got an inside handle on it. You may have, Annie.
Well, I just note, I think it was this morning, time blurs somewhat, but I heard Stacey Wood, the CEO of BSA, on Mike Hosking's show, and he put that to her, that it was a levy grabbing opportunity. And to be honest, her entire interview, I watched it hoping to get an idea of what she was seeking to achieve, what was going on behind the curtain, and really I'm none the wiser. Like, she was very incoherent in terms of I felt she argued against the point that they had jurisdiction, and then she argued for it. She said it wasn't about levies, but then she said they didn't have resources. So I'm not sure that they know. I think the idea that they've potentially got in over their head is quite credible. Whatever their motivation was initially, I don't know that they thought much would come of it.
There's another possibility, and it might be that the staff are not driving this. You know, the ones whose jobs are probably at stake if it is abolished. It might be that the tribunal members themselves a bit gung-ho and the staff are reluctant. I say that because this is quite a curious way they've approached the parliamentary committee that reviews them as an agency every year. All government agencies get reviewed by a committee once a year, and they have to give a report, and then they have to front up and be questioned. And they told the committee this year in November that they had a very obscure act, and they'd needed a law change to clarify it, and they actually said they'd been asking for 15 years for a change.
She said that on Hosking this morning.
Yeah, but they also released, shortly after talking to the committee, they released an opinion that they'd procured from a law firm in Auckland, Lowndes Jordan, which claimed that the definition was pretty clear and there wasn't really uncertainty at all. And it looked like the sort of opinion that if you're a commercial business, you'd go out to back up your bona fides and wave it around to show that the other side criticising you was all wrong. But it was just odd timing. You've just told Parliament that it's unclear. Then you procure an opinion that says it's clear. And publish it. I mean, they didn't have to release it if it was at odds with what they themselves believed. So sometimes simple solutions or simple explanations are best. It might be that the poor staff are having to deal with the consequences of tribunal members who've been pushing along without thinking through the implications of what's going on.
Regardless of the motivation, I think that there is definitely a desire by a lot of those involved and those who kind of on the periphery of these regulating bodies to bring back in line those who are using this technology to not play by the rules that they've set for us all. And so I think there definitely is a real drive from, I don't know if you want to call them the elites or the lanyard wearers. We all have different names for them. But there's this kind of instinct that the naughty ones have found a way around the rules and we must bring them back to heel. And I think that's what's happening here. And I think the important thing that perhaps listeners who aren't familiar with the issue need to understand is that this isn't actually just about someone who sets up a digital platform and has it as a professional business. The way that they have described this at various times would include just live streams. You know, if you jump on X with your friends to have a discussion about a spicy topic, you want to talk about immigration or something that gets everyone's passions risen, then, this could potentially be a regulator who could say, on this live stream, you had the wrong opinions. We're going to either fine you or find a way to punish you and make sure you don't do it again. So it very quickly becomes a matter not just of professional regulation, but of individual rights.
Absolutely. And I think that instinct is being seen anywhere. I think it's possible too that it might be a reflection of the intention to regulate, the under 16 ban, the intention to have a super regulator like the Australian E-Commissioner or E-Karen as she's called, because the managerial professional classes need to get control of the rude and unruly conversations of the population because they have opinions that are really grossly offensive and they should not be allowed to be expressed. It's quite simple.
There's a real theme that I've sort of talked about, and when I looked this year, especially at the policies, and there's an underlying theme there of the internet censorship creep, or the urge from many different areas, it seems, to, as you say, whether it's to control the unwashed or to really rein some of these opinions back in. And I found the interview on Hoskins to be very confused from Stacey Woods, on the one hand talking about freedom of expression, which is great, I'm loving the fact that that's been raised in the conversation, but then balancing that directly against harm and not saying what that is, again, that really vague subjective term, and almost alluding to like a single source of truth. People need to be able to seek and find information, but it's got to be the right information. It was slightly dystopian and a little scary, I thought. Douglas, what are your thoughts on the BSA?
The way they've gone about this is mitigates against an innocent approach, in my view. I agree that they've wanted to do this for a while, but if they had wanted to do it, and if they've had this view that they've had jurisdiction for 5-6 years now, if they had wanted to do that innocently, the answer would have been for them to write to the people they thought were covered and say, look, you're covered by our act, pay us some money. File your documents. Tell us if you owe us money. We need the money. We exist on the smell of an oily rag. And if you do something wrong, we have jurisdiction. Instead, what they've done is they've waited and waited and waited. And when somebody's made a complaint about someone who is not just outside the mainstream, but outside the mainstream of public service opinion, they've then said, we have jurisdiction over you and you need to answer us and tell us why we don't. They've got it backwards. In my view, doing it that way just says to me, it's not about the levy, it's not about the money, it is about the control. It is about extending their reach into the internet. And it does come back to, as much as they want to say, look, we're only about the big players, we're only about the people like the Sean Plunkets and the like, the live streamers on their interpretation are absolutely caught by this. And if they're big enough, Twitch streamers especially, if there is a Twitch streamer in New Zealand who has a significant audience, they need to file their paperwork and they need to pay the levy. And that catches OnlyFans, it catches X streamers, it catches anyone on Facebook Live, it catches anyone like that. And the BSA can say all they want. We're only going after the commercial people, but those sorts of people are commercial people. They make a living off it, they make money off it, they get advertising revenue, it's all covered. And just because they're not a company, and some of them are, but just because they're not a company that we recognize or a personality we recognize because they're seen by gamers or they're seen by porn addicts or they're seen by people on a particular Facebook page, doesn't mean that the law doesn't cover them if the BSA's view is correct. The BSA should have written to everybody and said, we think you're covered by the legislation, file the paperwork, pay us some money if you come within the definition, and if somebody makes a complaint, we'll come after you. But they haven't done that. No, I don't accept their explanation. I don't think it's innocent. They are exerting control against someone they don't like. They waited for the opportunity. It came along, and it is not innocent.
The key thing probably though for us is what do we do? We're in that unusual position where pretty much everyone who's commenting publicly, for one reason or other, says the BSA is mucked up and they are a bit of a joke. On the other hand, we have the Minister of Broadcasting who has been silent despite the Prime Minister actually saying this needs to be stopped, and they're doing nothing.
Yeah, I kind of got the impression from Paul Goldsmith that he was almost kind of on BSA's side. So then I was surprised when the Prime Minister was more sympathetic to us. Do you have a kind of gauge of where the government's at with it in general?
I think that they are, and we've picked this up from talking to other MPs, and not just in the National Party, that they really don't want to touch the BSA at the moment because they've got a number of fish to fry in this area, and they don't want the BSA tail to swing the dog. If they want to go out, for example, and create an e-regulator like Australia, you don't start a campaign to say it's stupid to try and regulate the internet. Let's get BSA stay out of there. They will want to control the narrative and to say that before there's any abolitions, there will be an alternative in place, and it's a prudent one, and they won't want arguments to start over a weak case. It's conceivable that the ministry even knew they were going to do this, because they thought it would start on a high with the country broadly saying, we all don't like Sean Plunket, give it to him. I don't know, but I think they are now in a position where there's quite a lot of policy that they will want to implement on this all around the world. It's a honeypot for politicians, and I guess for us, it's the important thing will be to make sure that people recognise that as soon as you're using honeyed words like preventing harm and ensuring offensive people don't have a voice and all the rest of it, that will be misused to suppress views unwelcome to those in power. As always, it's really takes us straight back to the very roots and origins of the fight for free speech. It's always proposed by people who can say they mean well, and it's always abused by people who don't want their power upset by criticism.
Well, it's funny. I hope you don't mind me jumping around here, but it reminds me of an article that Jelaine, you were quoted in today or yesterday about the telecoms bill, that the telecommunications and other matters, I think it's called. And in it, there was a tech users group spokesperson, and he said something along the lines of like that we were lucky we had a government we could trust to do these things, because it was a kind of fait accompli that encryption was going to be regulated under this bill. And I mean, no offense to this guy, because he actually was quite nice about us, but the idea that anyone would trust a government to regulate speech, obviously, but access to information and that kind of thing. Like, I know that we're at the bottom of the world, and I know that we do things a bit cute here sometimes, but seriously, we can't be trusting that, just let them regulate because, we trust each other down here, it's fine, No! What are you doing? I just found that, I thought that was like absolutely wild.
No, I agree. I was sort of also bemused that it was from a tech spokesman, I suppose, and it sounded so parochial, and that it'll be fine. They can build a censorship regime that they can then just, regulate without any primary legislation and, kick communication platforms off. But, it'll be fine. Nothing to see here. Perfect segue, though, into we had both Douglas Brown and Hannah Clow presenting to the Select Committee today on the Telecommunications and Other Amendments Bill. Douglas, do you want to sort of give us a rundown on how this popped up over Christmas, very curiously, and why we are commenting on, and why we asked a whole lot of people to join us in submitting to the Select Committee on this sort of random Telecommunications and Other Amendments Act?
So this just sort of randomly got notified to us just before Christmas. And it's not something you'd notice offhand, because the actual amendment bill to the Telecommunications Act is incredibly convoluted. It has taken a lot of time to try and work out what it actually means. And I mean, I edited a commentary on statutory interpretation for 3 years, so I know how to pass statutes, and even with that, it was difficult to work my way through this. And so when it came through that, hey, there's an issue, could be an issue here just before Christmas, and this bill was only introduced in October. At the first reading, everyone was talking about how this was bringing in a consumer protection for people who are accessing service providers who are coming from overseas, and it was making a level playing field for people who were like Starlink. If Blue Origin comes in, if other overseas network providers are providing services, that they should also have their customers should have the consumer protections that 1 New Zealand and 2 degrees and the like have to provide here as well. But tucked away in that amendment bill, 2 little words really, which have a huge impact, and those are the words any person, and they change Section 9 of what we call TICSA, which is the law relating to interception capability. And they take the interception capability that local network operators and service operators have to provide to law enforcement agencies for messaging services, and extends it to anybody anywhere in the world who is providing it a service of that nature to a New Zealander, any person in New Zealand. Now, the only service really that affects at the moment in New Zealand is email and text messaging. Text messaging being the main way that you notice it. And as a criminal defence lawyer, I cannot tell you how many tens of thousands of text messages I have had to read over the years of people who have sent just the most banal, ridiculous, incriminating text messages that the police have just said to the various telcos, please download this person's text messages and give them to us. And people know that the police do this, and they still do it. In fact, they know
it was me, officer. It was me.
You may as well.
Don't tell anyone I did the murder.
Honestly, the funniest intercepted call I've ever heard was in a depositions almost 20 years ago now, where literally the person making the call said, "Oh, the police are listening to my call, but here's how you make methamphetamine." Seriously, he literally said, "The police are listening to my call, but here's the recipe." And honestly, every person in the courtroom was looking at him, and he was bright red and trying to shrink into his seat. The guy, he was a moron, lovely fella, absolute moron. Anyway.
How long
and
did he
right,
get?
The police were listening to his call. Not long enough. Nowhere near. Just for being stupid. Anyway, so they still use it. And it's taken it into outside the outside providers, like, and the thing about these outside providers is all of these outside providers use data. They don't use short messaging service, which is text messaging. They don't use email. They use data, and it's all end-to-end encrypted. And this has been something that governments all around the world have wanted to get into for the last few years, because they can't breach this end-to-end encryption, because the mathematics used in this is so difficult that it's just pretty much impossible. Nobody's got into it, and all of these groups who run these, so Signal, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Apple Messages, have all said, when asked for a backdoor, have said no chance. In fact, when they've been threatened with consequences, for example, Apple got told that they had to provide a backdoor into iCloud in the UK, they decrypted everything instead, because they just said, okay, we will make things less secure, so we don't have to give you any access into it, because the moment you put a backdoor into anything with encryption, there is no longer encryption. Somebody will get it, and the government may have a backdoor, but some bad actor is going to find that backdoor, and the bad actors are usually smarter than the governments. So
you may have noticed, Douglas, that Elon Musk said yesterday that WhatsApp and there's another one in the news at the moment, have both been hacked and are readily penetrated by the...
I hadn't noticed that. No, yeah. I'll have to catch up on that.
He also said that they are routinely read by Meta or by their platform provider.
Absolutely.
I would not be surprised.
Although it's possibly at either end. Signal got... Sweden wanted to read Signal, have a backdoor into Signal. As Signal said, that's okay, we'll just pull out. And the Swedish army said, no, don't do that, we use them.
Apparently Signals, the China, I don't know, again, it might well be just the dark reaches of the internet, but with this report that the Chinese have for 4.5 years been had access to the British government's or the British Prime Minister's office and Downing Street's comms, was also a report that that said Signal had been penetrated as well. So I don't know.
Have a hard time with Signal. It's open source, and if it was able to be penetrated, somebody would have noticed. And there's some
this is
fairly
another thing
high-level
that comes up.
mathematicians doing look at that.
This is another thing that comes up, and I've had, and I guess especially in that article that I referred to before, the tech guys were saying, well, basically the ship sailed on encryption anyway because of the growing capabilities of AI. We will have to come up with an entirely new way anyway because our computers will beat each other, and then encryption will be useless. So I take that argument in that we don't like to waste time opposing something that's pointless, but at the same time there's a principle that I think that we need to stand by, which is that we just don't let the government come stomping in and taking away access, privacy rights, and there are very good reasons personally and professionally that people use encrypted messaging. You often hear about I guess that the personal being on an individual level and why it matters to them, but also what this means for businesses is quite significant. Like if businesses suddenly can't rely on encryption, whether that's because it's been removed by the government or because AI's beaten it, are we back to suddenly there's a bloke with a satchel taking documents from office to office because we can't?
We absolutely are. Absolutely we are.
It's an interesting one. It's an interesting one for a free speech organisation because there are many civil liberties issues that are tangential to or implicated. Freedom of association, obviously, freedom of religion, freedom of belief, where we have to at least consider it. But whether a right to secrecy is part of the right to free speech isn't automatic. And I think that we ought to be careful about our own personal revulsion at some of these things and feeling that it's important, not dragging us away from the common denominator issue on which everyone who supports us and wants us to defend free speech will agree. I don't know whether in this encryption secrecy area there's, how big the group would be of folk who'd say, look, if it means they catch criminals, if they can intercept the conversation of criminals, I'm fine with that, and I don't see that as a free speech issue.
Small.
What about the chilling effect?
So well, the chilling effect, they would say, don't talk about crime if you don't want to be convicted of crime because they've heard you, and all of that is true.
If we're talking, if I'm, if I use my example, if I'm in a group with a bunch of women and we're saying, we're going to protest against this law they're bringing in that says blokes can say they're women, but the government's decided that it is beyond the pale to say that blokes can't be women. We now can't rely on the fact that our communications are secure. The government could access them, so we then don't have that conversation. We don't organise. We don't do the protest. We don't, you know what I mean?
That's the least of your worries. I mean, the worry is that you're not allowed to say it. That's the worry. Whether how they find you doing it. I mean, they can put spies into you. They can do a whole lot of ways in which they can find what you're saying. It's just, we could put a lot of effort into this as one of the risks, but I think as an organisation, we've got to really ask ourselves every time, what proportion of those who are anxious about free speech will see this as a natural element of it? And
I think most of them will, personally.
We could probably find out.
Most of them are. The thing is,
maybe we ask.
One thing is that they are inextricably linked. Without one, you don't get necessarily to the other.
No, I disagree entirely on that.
The second thing
be practically linked.
Is that the law enforcement authorities often, and we saw this in the select committee today, not with us but with others, is that, well, what about law enforcement? What about, intercepting bad actors and things like that? But the law enforcement authorities have never, ever really given us anything to show that they do not have an effect without this interception capability. We don't actually have evidence to show that it's necessary.
None of that is free speech issue.
No, but you're missing my point here. The fact is that they are wanting to have this ability without actually justifying it. And as I say,
Yeah, but
hold on.
That doesn't make it a free speech issue.
I'm disagreeing with you on the point that it is. I'm saying it is a free speech issue because it's tangentially necessary for free speech. You're disagreeing with that, and that's absolutely fine. But my point is, if it's not justified to have it, at least at that level, then it's unnecessary, and they should justify it to get it. It shouldn't
That's
just
a
be,
good
well,
argument.
you justify
It's a
not
very good
having it.
argument against it, but it's not a free speech argument.
See, I disagree with you there. I think it is. I think it's at least tangential to it.
I reckon we clip that, and I'm going to put it on our socials, and people can tell us.
Yeah.
It would be what I was most concerned about in this was almost the building of the regime that didn't then require any oversight. It was one person who could, just add a whole lot of regulations, and that could have been content moderation
Unelected.
easily in there as
Without
well.
review.
With no review, no proportionality, no you have to show why. It was more, and that speaks to Annie's earlier comment about, we can trust the government. It was like, it's trust but verify people. Let's have checks and balances at every
But there's
point
not even
here,
a
and
verification.
especially
It's just this is good. We're doing okay here. And the Secretary for Business says, okay, I'll do what you want. It's not.
I'll
Those
pull the
are
lever.
very much. They are very much free speech issues. They are really at the heart of it. That someone can simply decide to write a regulation. What you can.
And everybody's messaging
I just have a
goes
real beef
AWOL
with the
because
fact
they
that
put a
it's-
block on.
Yeah. And I always come back to, I have a real beef with anyone who we cannot vote out having that kind of power. And yes, you have senior public servants have all sorts of powers. I do realise that. But with levers like that are kind of unilateral pull or push, I just think that it shouldn't be someone who's been appointed to a job and, can't be sacked by the people. Yeah.
Annie, I think I don't think we even get to that. I mean, that's objectionable. But even if they can be sacked by the people, free speech says that, because the majority will often vote for someone who will dong those they don't like, the minority. It is simply a simple principle. No one should have that power.
Exactly.
We need a First Amendment approach, a really principled approach.
Very, very true. Very true.
And also it was the timing of it, because we were seeing X, via sort of Grok being threatened to be pulled as a platform, Iran, shutting down their communications, exactly. And it really targeted entire communication platforms. So again, it was just like the control by communication. Leading us on to what might be our last topic. Let's see how we go. But it was about the Nursing Council recently introducing a code of conduct that almost seemed to codify how they've been acting in the last few years in terms of wanting to sanction people for their expressions. And let's even just stay right in the area that this is private expression or opinions that are well outside the areas of their professional competency, not even like edge cases, for instance, and it really felt like it was a gross overreach, this proposed code. We've still got another couple of we don't need to submit until I think early March, I believe, or on this code. But it really also speaks to Cath Simpson, who's one of the nurses that we're supporting. I know Douglas has put quite a bit of time into preparing for that, and we've got sort of some hearing dates. Do you want to talk about sort of Cath Simpson, and then we can just also generally talk about these regulatory bodies that just seem to be wanting to silence opinions they don't like, expressions they don't like or might find offensive, and particularly when they're outside any vague line that you could draw towards the area of competence.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is post facto justification for what they've been doing for a while now. And the scary thing is that the Health Practitioner Disciplinary Tribunal and the High Court have both justified it and said, yep, we agree with you. But they've justified it on the basis that nobody seems to have effectively challenged the evidence that's been brought by the Nursing Council. And so where Cath Simpson has gotten wrong is that she has expressed or agreed with views that the Nursing Council doesn't like, in that she has said that one of the plaintiff in the Giggle and Tickle case is a man, even though he thinks he's a woman. She has disagreed with one of the co-leaders of the Te Pāti Māori, and said that the tattoos on his face were performative. She has reposted a video that's clearly an AI video of that was alleging to be London in about 15 years' time, which was showing it to be a fairly unpleasant place, and she commented that way. And somebody has noticed this and made a complaint to the Nursing Council, and a staff member at the Nursing Council has done their own research and taken it further, and then it's just blown up from there. Now, the original complainant hasn't wanted to be involved at all. They are just not interested anymore. They've gone. They're not part of it. And the Nursing Council has described these views as being extreme, and they think that Cath is unsafe to be around patients. For example, by calling Annie, what's the anyway the bloke who thinks that's the one, Roxy Tickle. By calling Roxy Tickle a man, she is a danger to or unsafe around transgender people. Now, and will make transgender people feel unsafe. Now, it doesn't matter, of course, that transgender people may not have seen this post on X. It's irrelevant. It just shows that apparently she cannot be trusted around transgender people. So much so that they wanted her to be actually supervised every day when she was meeting a patient at her own cost, because they weren't going to pay for it.
That's outrageous.
It is outrageous.
Let's just go to what's to happen. I mean, we've now got so many cases of regulatory professional regulators overreaching, and we've got the Dixon case coming up, and we've got we've got the Moffat case, which is not a regulator but an employer. All of these things have common elements. I've been really thinking lately, we keep railing against these agencies, and we should, because they are absurd and they're abusing their power and all the rest of it, and they're far away from what gives them the power, which is supposed to be the consumer interest, and they don't even feel it necessary to show that there's any genuine consumer risk. But I think we just have to really have
complaints from consumers.
Yeah. They are exercising powers delegated by the government. They get their power from statutes and the licensing ability they have to destroy someone's employment. I just think we have to do, every time we comment on it publicly, it is the responsibility of the ministers.
Yes.
They have had,
put it back at their feet.
has had, ACT and New Zealand First have spoken strongly against this sort of thing, really well. But it's been in their power to put an end to it. We've offered them draft legislation prepared by David Harvey and myself. David's a very well-respected retired judge, and they haven't even bothered to come and discuss it with us. We have no idea why or what reception. So that from the politician, it has been all talk and no do. And I think that our function this year during the election has to be to basically ram it home to the parties and the particular politicians who've been all talk and no do on these scandals.
Yeah. I agree.
I think it's important for people to understand as well. We've talked about a few cases here The Nursing Council draft code of conduct not only would make it so that basically all the cases that we've won, I guess, for people probably wouldn't have if this code of conduct had been in existence. But also, for me, I mean, I know, don't tell me off, Stephen, I'm going to go a little bit off free speech, but for me, this is also strays into my old leftist union kind of employee rights space where this code would literally make it so that you are never off the clock, ever. Like if you're a nurse, 24/7, you are under scrutiny. You can't go get wasted, make a fool of yourself and say inappropriate things like, you know, all of us have probably done. Because if someone records it, takes a screenshot of a private conversation, anything, you could lose your entire career. It is insane.
Look, and it's much worse now than it used to be because the union is on the side of the.
I know.
Yes,
the
the union agrees with the council.
You don't have anyone to look out. You don't have anyone who will help you now.
No.
And
whereas
so
the nursing union saying, actually, no, when they clock off, they're their own person. You don't own
because
them.
No, they want to turn all of these professions into effectively that want to regulate them like priesthoods.
But the other part of this is the fact that the standards themselves don't actually give any guidance to nurses to what they can or can't say, because it simply says maintain a high standard of professional behaviour, see guidance, fitness to practice and public confidence, including when you use social media and electronic forms of communication. Ensure when making public statements, including on social media, you are not making offensive, abusive, inflammatory or ill-informed statements that may bring discredit. Now, when you get to guidance, fitness to practice and public confidence, it simply says if you undertake unlawful or unethical actions in your personal life, they will reflect adversely on your fitness to practice and be of concern to the Nursing Council or may bring discredit to the profession. Other behaviour may not lead to criminal or regulatory disciplinary proceedings. There is no guidance there whatsoever as to what. I mean, Cath Simpson's case does not fall within that according to the guidance. And yet they saying that her comments were extreme. And I mean it. That's literally in the charges they brought against her. Extreme. Simply saying that a person who thinks they're transgender is unwell.
It's even beyond just like saying inappropriate or un-PC things though. Like some of the wording suggests that if I were to go text my partner, tonight's shift's a bloody nightmare, we're understaffed, you know, we don't have enough of this, and complained about work, as we all do, that could be seen as undermining the health system. And so that could be evidence if someone took a record of that conversation, took a screenshot. Suddenly I'm in trouble because I whinged to my partner that we're understaffed.
And these are real consequences too. And like, I think it's important to realise that with Cath Simpson, you know, it could be literally losing her licence, her livelihood, fines of up to something like $30,000. These aren't slaps on the hands. You know, this is the process
Suspension
is
for
the
9
punishment.
months.
Do we know whether there's any groundswell of resistance to any of this among nurses generally?
No.
I mean,
look, because until Cath, most of the time these proceedings have been suppressed. I think possibly for the first time ever, I pushed back on this, and actually this is not suppressed, but up until now they've actually enforced a suppression order. There is no grounds really for suppression of this. What they've done is they've said, don't talk about it or we'll potentially prosecute you for contempt of the tribunal. And so they've had that threat through to the hearing itself. And
my case is the same, Douglas. My case is the same. The pursuit of the prosecution of me by the disciplinary process, it's covered by suppression orders. And I've said that as soon as this is over, I'll
sing like a canary.
But
I didn't wait for that.
One of the wicked things is that they don't even have to show a public benefit from it.
No.
There's no requirement.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yep. We've been contacted by more and more people, and especially even commenting on this and sort of building, but also there's such a, there was the confidentiality, your livelihood is absolutely at risk. So the stakes are high for a lot of these people. So that they are really contacting us very covertly and confidentially. But, I know that a lot of nurses are organising to put in submissions as well, to work with us to sort of do this, to build a bit of a groundswell for it. But I also find that this is an election
and we're going to draw
year.
some attention to it. I think we've got to get people agreeing to those fundamental principles here. And I think it'll be an interesting one for us because nurses probably haven't been as engaged with the topic of free speech, perhaps. I'm making some vast assumptions here based on the fact that initially when we set up, a lot of men supporters were coming along to Free Speech Union. I think this is an opportunity for a more female sector to see how their speech and their rights are getting, I guess, curtailed and breached here. And so I'm quite excited that we have a chance to reach out to them and say, look, on this specific issue, we've got your back. Come and join us as we push back on specifically this code, which is designed to own you from dawn until dusk and make sure you never say anything they don't like. And I think that we'll get some women and male nurses, I should check myself, but will come along and think, I haven't really engaged with this issue before, but this feels real. It's a very tangible example of the exercise of these really tyrannical powers by these regulatory bodies. It's quite astounding. And I totally agree, Stephen, this election year, we just have to lay it at the feet of the politicians over and over again. And to be honest, I think I'm quite disappointed in Nicole McKee. I thought we had someone with a bit of nous who might run this for us because she was the minister responsible. It's been quite disappointing. I know they're all busy, but I think we really have to put the pressure on so that whoever wants our votes might think actually it's quite an important thing that we do.
And any last, okay, perfect. That's probably a perfect way or a time for us to wrap up. Annie mentioned we're really going to push into the nurses' code of conduct, rallying support for the submission and asking more people to sort of do that submission as well and sort of driving them to a site. And so hopefully sometime next week we'll really lean into that and look to gather some support for that. But I just want to thank all of my fellow board members for contributing in the first Board Free to Speak episode. We've got an email address if you've got any comments. If you're listening to this, if you've got any comments or any suggestions about future speakers, especially when Dane's interviewing, please email those through to podcast@fsu.nz. And also if you want to join the Free Speech Union, join fsu.nz, subscribe, become a member, and it's an election year. We can really, band together and take up the fights that mean something to people, and sort of protect people's livelihoods and make sure the government doesn't pass regulations and laws under our noses that create these uncensored censorship machines. So thank you, Stephen, Douglas, Annie. I really appreciate the time, and we'll see everyone next time on Free to Speak.
Thank you for listening to Free to Speak. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and consider sharing the podcast with others. We release new episodes regularly, and subscribing is the easiest way to stay up to date. If you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, you can contact us at podcast@fsu.nz. If you want to find out more about the New Zealand Free Speech Union, visit fsu.nz.